Great. Okay. If anyone has trouble hearing me or needs to get in touch with one of us, you can chat either Lauren or me in the chat window on your GoToMeeting toolbar there. So although it says, I am getting a little bit of background noise, so I'm going to mute you all. Okay. If you cannot hear me, please send me a chat. Otherwise, we're going to get started. Okay, so unlike what GoToMeeting thinks, I'm actually Molly Janice Smith. Katie Schmidt is another member of my team, and we have the same GoToMeeting account, so that's why. But yes, I'm Molly Janice Smith. I am managing the Energize St. Paul program and the Race to Reduce this summer, and I'm really glad to have you all here to learn a little bit more about what we're doing. The focus for the June month is benchmarking, and so this webinar is largely about benchmarking. We will, however, get into a little bit more detail on the rest of Energize St. Paul as well. I'm having a little bit of trouble advancing my screen. Let's try that. Great. Okay. So Energize St. Paul is an initiative that was announced by the mayor about a month ago. And what it is a partnership between the city of St. Paul and our buildings around energy and water efficiency. So what we would like to create is Energize St. Paul as the first place that existing buildings can go to make their buildings more resilient, lower their utility costs, lower their energy consumption, and in so doing, help St. Paul lower our overall carbon footprint. One of the great benefits of efficiency is that it also reduces utility bill burden, which we know is a much larger percentage of income for lower income residents in St. Paul. It also lowers, energy efficiency can also lower the cost of doing business by reducing your utility bills. So we were very proud to have Mayor Carter help us launch the initiative. And our first offering really is the Race to Reduce. So Energize St. Paul is the umbrella that's going to include a number of different efficiency programs. The first offering of Energize St. Paul is the Race to Reduce. So why do we care about energy consumption? Well, one of the primary motivators for the city of St. Paul, at least, is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We know the motivators are different for different buildings and different stakeholders that we talk to, but for the city of St. Paul, we want to reduce our city's impact on climate change. So U.S. buildings use more energy than most large economies in the world, just our building stock. So that doesn't include our transportation, our land use changes, agricultural sources of greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera. That's just our buildings. And of the energy that we use in our buildings, the estimate is that about 30% of it is wasted, which amounts to $60 billion a year. Oh, Lauren, we can see your screen.
Sorry, Molly. It looks like we were frozen on the slides. I don't know if the slides are frozen on other people's.
So is it just on the intro slide?
Yeah, it was on the first slide. If anyone else has
it working now?
Problem. It looks like. Sorry, I am stuck on my screen here.
Yeah, it looks like we're viewing your screen.
Yeah. And let's see, step back to,
Sorry, guys.
yeah, sorry about that. Is that back to your?
Okay, I'll get it. Okay.
And it looks like we're back to yours then.
Okay, great. Yep. So you're an organizer. So I would I did that so that you could help people with audio controls and stuff, but perhaps just sit tight since we're not sure why it froze and went to your screen.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Let's see here. Where was I? So let me go back into presentation mode. Okay. Great. So where was I? Okay. So we believe that there's a big opportunity to save energy and thus greenhouse gas emissions from buildings. We took the opportunity to measure our greenhouse gas emission sources in St. Paul, performing an inventory. And we found, as is common among cities, that our building sector energy usage contributed about 52% of our total greenhouse gas footprint, of which the majority of it was commercial energy. So commercial energy on its own is actually about 30%, if I recall, of our total emissions from any sources in St. Paul. So, and commercial energy does include multifamily buildings. So we know that we're not going to be able to lower our overall greenhouse gas footprint without tackling energy usage in our large buildings. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor as to why St. Paul is interested in reducing energy consumption from buildings. Sorry, I'm once again having trouble advancing the slide. You know, you try these things out prior to the meeting and they work fine, and then you get in here and they don't. Okay. So we believe that benchmarking is part of the solution to climate change emissions from St. Paul. So benchmarking is our first step in the race to reduce. We'll get into a little bit more detail on what benchmarking is in the future, but I didn't want to get too far before mentioning why we are all here, which is on the phone we have partners, stakeholders, and participating buildings. And we are gathered this summer really to work on the race to reduce. It's our first offering for buildings through the Energize St. Paul suite of programs. We want to help large buildings save money through energy efficient operations and maintenance. So from the building perspective, we know that oftentimes it's really saving money that drives people to energy efficiency. And as I already described, from the city perspective, it's really more about preventing climate change emissions from our city. That said, when we get into helping public buildings save money through energy efficient operations and maintenance, you know, we kill two birds with one stone. So we have a lot of public buildings participating in the race as well. In addition to helping our large buildings save money but through energy efficiency, we also want to recognize that there's already a lot of really great work that's going into our buildings, making them more efficient and helping the city respond to climate change and reduce our emissions. So that recognition piece is something that we've really thought a lot about, and we plan that buildings that join the race during the summer will be recognized at a ceremony in the fall. And we're hoping that we will once again get the mayor's office participation in that ceremony. And I'll show you a little bit more about what you as a building would need to do in order to be recognized. So each month we're asking our buildings to focus on a different theme. The themes basically are laid out across the summer, and we're bleeding into September a little bit because really, as we know, in Minnesota, the summer is really short. So our theme for this month, which we're just wrapping up, is assessment. And what that means for us is really a focus on benchmarking, which we believe is the first step to developing an energy reduction plan. And we want to provide you with additional tools to help you not only benchmark, but also understand what your benchmarking metrics mean. In July, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We will still be 100% available to help you benchmark because we're sure that not everybody's been able to get it done in June. So benchmarking, is more of a continuous process, which is fine. But in July, we're going to switch our program focus to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. July is creeping towards our hottest month. Some years it's July, some years it's August. And we use energy differently in the heat of the summer. It makes us turn our attention to things like our air conditioning units, which, we don't have switched on during the winter months all the time because it's cold outside. And so when we do go to turn on that AC and when we're really, really reliant on it working in our large buildings, it's a great idea to check your equipment, to clean your filters, to make sure that whatever contractor you're working with is doing what they say they're going to do, and that you understand the basics of how maintained your HVAC system is. In August, we're going to turn to scheduling, which is when we go to check our lighting and space conditioning schedules predominantly. We've all been in buildings where the lights turn off when you're in the bathroom, or we've driven by buildings at 3 in the morning and wondered, why are the lights still on? Well, a lot of times people think their buildings are turned off at night, but they're actually not. And so we're going to work with our participating buildings to check out those systems and provide some tips about how to get them back in order so that when your staff comes back from vacation, the building will be running efficiently again. Then in September, we're going to talk about next steps. Next steps in terms of how to move forward with efficiency in your building, whether you're far along your learning curve of efficiency or not. What types of different ways you can continue to track and measure your energy and water usage, what those numbers mean, different ways that you can take advantage of the partnerships that we've formed and the knowledge that we've all gained through this process. So September is about next steps. And after September, likely in November, we'll have our recognition ceremony. And the reason for the lag time there is because we know that it takes a bit of time to benchmark. And if we want to benchmark all the way through the summer, we're going to need a few 4 to 6 weeks of lag time after that before everyone's able to get their numbers in, because utility bills don't arrive right away. So we're trying to offer a consistent program of activities every month with the topic changing. So you're here in our June webinar. Next month, we're planning to have a networking event. We'll have a newsletter and office hours consistently every month. And then June, July, and August, we're planning to offer tip sheets. More about the June tip sheet in a little bit. So now that we know that benchmarking is an essential first step, not just in the race to reduce, but in energy management, what does benchmarking mean? We know the adage, you can't manage what you don't measure. And so benchmarking is all about reviewing your building energy and water performance to make sure that you're using energy and water as anticipated, both over time, i.e. comparing yourself to yourself, like comparing summer 2017 to summer 2018, as well as relative to peers, comparing your building with other buildings that are similar, and figuring out if you are using more energy than your peers, using less energy than your peers, or just about at the median. I'll show you a little bit more about how we can figure that out. So what is benchmarking? Benchmarking basically combines two silos of information. One is meter consumption, and we have a lot of different types of building configurations in terms of meters and what utilities they receive. But generally, they fall into the types of utilities you're receiving in your buildings in St. Paul fall into these 6 categories. Then we also have building characteristics. And benchmarking is basically the combination of those different numbers in order to get metrics that help you understand your building performance. So why can't the city just do this ourselves? We get this question quite a bit. The truth is that we don't have access to your utility information. The meters are either inside or outside of your building, and you're paying for the bills, or your landlord is paying for the bills. And so it's not something that we have access to. It is something, however, that either your landlord has access to if you're in a multi-tenant building, or you yourself, if your building is owner operated, have access to. There's also an opportunity, and we can talk more about this a little bit later if folks are curious. There's also an opportunity to get your Excel energy data downloaded for your whole building. So we do have some guidance on that we'll be sending out in the next couple of days, basically sometime this week. But so you have your meter consumption data, or you can get it from your utility. The city knows where your building is, how big it is, what parcel it's on, and the city also, we have our friends from St. Paul Regional Water Services on the phone. The city is also involved in providing water service to our buildings. So we do have that much information. Building owners specifically know about schedules and occupancy. And if your building is a 24/7 operation, like maybe a hospital, you're going to have different characteristics in terms of how you use energy than if you're more of a 9-to-5 office building. Similarly, some buildings are very full. Some buildings are just trying to find renters for their lease space, and so they're not fully occupied yet. These types of things are important in order to understand your energy usage relative to other buildings and make an apples to apples comparison. So those apples to apples comparisons are that we are primarily fixated on with our program is energy use intensity, which is a measure of the amount of energy per square foot, and also your Energy Star score, which is a metric provided by EPA when we use Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and when we have a building that is covered by the Energy Star program. I'll get into a little bit more detail on that. And I'm just going to quick pause and unmute you all and see if there's any questions at this point. If not, that's fine. Yeah, hi. Oh, no, she's taken. Did you have a question?
No, we're just on mute, that's all.
Okay. With the audio problems, it's very reassuring. Thank you. Okay, great. I'll keep plowing forth in my presentation. But my hope here is really just to give you a flavor of what benchmarking is, what our programs are, and then if you have specific questions or concerns, make note of those and we'll talk about them at the end. Okay. So I'm going to go, okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to mute you all again. Okay. Now it's back to just me. So now we know a little bit more about what benchmarking is. And we know that the Race to Reduce is encouraging us to benchmark. Apologies, I didn't get the slide updated, but we do have the phone number for our office hours at the end of the presentation. In June, we're providing resources around benchmarking. This webinar is one of those resources, and we have lots of others as well. So we'll talk a little bit at the end about what you can expect, and anybody who still needs to sign up for receiving these resources via email can do so. The primary system that we use for benchmarking, not just us, but also about 24 cities across the country, is Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It is free. It also has extremely useful metrics, such as calculating your energy usage intensity and your Energy Star score. It is not the fanciest system in the world, and there's lots of other systems that can probably be a bit more tailored to your business in terms of the reports that are available, the ability to enter utility information in real time, etc. We have tons of companies actually with offices in St. Paul that would be more than happy to talk to you about that if you want a fancier system. But we do believe that Energy Star Portfolio Manager is a good balance between low cost, i.e. free, and providing useful metrics, also providing ways to connect directly with utilities and to upload your data via spreadsheet if that's how you have it. Since this is the most commonly used system, it has a lot of those interfaces that allow you to use it in a more automatic way. So that's another big benefit of Portfolio Manager. But you might wonder, where does benchmarking fit into my overall plan? And as I was sitting thinking about this portion of the presentation, I thought, well, what type of plan should I be referencing here? So I decided to put my blank plan, because really you could be talking about a financial plan, an operational plan, maybe even a marketing plan, but certainly any plan to reduce the amount of money that you spend running your building. You can incorporate energy benchmarking into it. So that's why I decided to let you insert in your mind what kind of plan that would be. I think the typical pathway here that's outlined is an energy management plan, but I do believe that if you are creating or implementing a financial plan or an operational plan within your building, energy benchmarking could be a very valuable part of that. So the way that energy benchmarking could fit into your planning process is it helps you assess how you're performing in terms of energy and water consumption relative to peers and relative to yourself. It also, after you start to implement some energy efficiency measures, or if you've already done so, implement further energy efficiency measures, you can check back with your benchmarking data and evaluate your progress. Perhaps you'll see that your Energy Star score has increased or your energy usage intensity has gone down. Then you'll know that the steps that you're taking are working, and you can perhaps decide to roll out those same steps to other floors or to other buildings within your portfolio. But I think that benchmarking is a really good check at a number of different steps for any plan where you're trying to reduce your costs due to utilities. So benchmarking can help you manage energy. It can also help you save money. And again, since we know that our audience contains a lot of people who are building owners and building managers, we do focus a lot of our language on saving money. You can prioritize which buildings have the greatest potential to save based on your energy usage intensity. You can use benchmarking to develop a baseline of your building energy and water consumption, and you can use that to track savings and progress towards goals. you can understand how other buildings like yours are performing versus a national baseline. I've seen both buildings benchmarked who were surprised by how high their numbers were, as well as buildings that were built to be really green that didn't score particularly well. So a lot of what this comes down to is actually operations and maintenance. In fact, some of our oldest buildings in St. Paul are some of our most efficient. If your score when you enter your utility information into Energy Star Portfolio Manager, if the 1 through 100 score that comes out is greater than 75, your building may qualify for Energy Star certification. And not only does that mean that your utility costs are lower than average, it also means that statistically you are likely to have greater occupancy and your building is more likely to, is more valuable. So Energy Star certification, even though it is not a super high bar as are some of the other green building certifications, it actually is demonstrated to add value to your property. And in fact, I know several organizations that are housed in Energy Star buildings where that was a big selling factor for them to become a tenant in that building. So how do you get that Energy Star certification? And I know that there was some language in our meeting invite about Energy Star. So I'll provide a little taste of what it looks like to benchmark your building in Portfolio Manager. And then I'm also providing you with a number of resources, both in this presentation as well as later in the month with our tip sheet. So Energy Star Portfolio Manager is our benchmarking system of choice. We do get a lot of questions about how can I possibly compare my building to another building, you know, when my building is 120 years old and has, you know, a number of different types of tenants within it. Well, one of the ways that Energy Star Portfolio Manager can help you make an apples-to-apples comparison to other buildings is because they have all these property types listed. So you can not only select a single property type, you are asked to select your top property types, the ways that your property space is being used. And that is one of the main ways that Energy Star helps calculate your benchmark versus other buildings that are performing similar functions. Once you get into the system, and we'll provide you with some tutorials and guidance to help you navigate it and help you fill out your building, there are property use details that will help you essentially narrow the focus of your benchmark. So the starred items here, like this, I believe is for a hotel, like gross floor area, number of rooms, all of these starred metrics go into your Energy Star score. There's also, as you can see on this page, and if you are using the system, you'll see throughout Portfolio Manager, there's also unstarred metrics. Those are certainly useful and can help you understand energy and water usage in your building better, but they are not necessarily going into the Energy Star score calculation. And just to clarify, your Energy Star score is 1 through 100, where 50 is the median performance level for your building type. And if you score greater than 75 on your Energy Star score, you may qualify for an Energy Star certification. Now, I can't mention Energy Star scores this summer without mentioning that EPA is updating its metrics that it uses to calculate those nationwide and regional averages of building performance that go into the Energy Star score. So the reason this is relevant is if you do have a building benchmarked in Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and that building is one of the building types that can get a score, most of those scores will drop in late August this year. It sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually a really good thing. What it means is that the building stock in the United States is increasing in energy performance. So the EPA, in turn, is updating the metrics that they use to calculate your energy performance relative to your peers, because looking at the data, all of our building peers have gotten more efficient. So that's why, the Energy Star score is based on average energy usage intensity across your portfolio, across the portfolio buildings that are in Energy Star. And so if those buildings on the whole become more efficient, then it makes sense that our Energy Star scores are going to drop. That said, if you do have a building that is greater than 75 or 75 or more in its Energy Star portfolio manager score, for the next month, and I believe it's almost exactly a month, it goes until July 26th or something like that. If you submit your building with its current score and your paperwork is in check, you could qualify with your current score, and you wouldn't have to cross your fingers and hope that your score doesn't drop below 75. After August 26th, you will not have that option. And the only way that they're promising to review your documentation is if you submit it by July 26th, so a month before the score change. Any questions about that? And I can definitely help. And I also have contacts at EPA that can help us understand this a little bit better. But just a brief aside for those who are anxiously watching their portfolio manager scores. Where can we go for more resources? So Lauren is our wonderful intern on the Energize St. Paul program this summer, have predominantly used the Energy Star Portfolio Manager training that are linked here. We have also, and we will continue to add to our Energize St. Paul resources on our website. We are also offering office hours, 1 to 5, Tuesdays and Thursdays, at the phone number that you see here. You can also call that phone number anytime and leave a message. It's just that 1 to 5 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays this summer, we are committing to pick up the phone. And so you'll know that you'll have a friendly voice at the other end that can help you solve your benchmarking problems. You can email us, and I'll give you my email address at the end of the presentation here. And Lauren is also available. I will refer questions to her as well for some of the areas that she's focusing on. And we are just in the final stages of tidying up our June tip sheet, which is going to be a step-by-step guide on benchmarking. So that will contain detailed instructions, including what years you need to benchmark, where you can go to find your data, what if you need any permissions in order to get that data, a little bit more detail on all of the different steps that go into benchmarking. And just so that you all know, you're unmuted now if you want to chime in. As I mentioned, Race to Reduce is our first offering under Energize St. Paul. We are just finishing up the assessment phase, but we also know that many buildings will be continuing the benchmarking over the summer, and that's great. That's what we're here for. So we are working on our HVAC tip sheet for July, as well as a networking event for your building operators to get to know each other and to visit with heating, ventilation, and air conditioning experts that one of our partners is offering. In August, we're going to be turning to scheduling, and we're hoping to have an event that month. We will definitely have a tip sheet, and we'll continue to provide a newsletter and office hours. And then, the fall will unfold. There'll probably be a mad dash to benchmark in September, so we'll be available by phone to help with that. And we'll likely have a number of different webinars to offer in September as well to help you think through what some of your next steps might be. And then,
Molly,
as I mentioned, recognition ceremony at the end of the fall. Yep.
Molly, this is Jerry Ludden, St. Paul Water Department. How many participants do you have in the program so far?
Participating building. Lauren, what did you say that was the estimate yesterday?
It was at about 50, just below 50, I believe.
Okay. And I know we had talked, Molly, about meeting. Is there a part of that information that they're going to call the water department to get their usage history? And do we have that contact, maybe a list or something that we could put a note on the accounts ahead of time?
Yeah, that's a great idea. We're certainly not discouraging buildings from benchmarking their water usage in the rates to reduce, but it's not a requirement. That said, we are encouraging it because once you're in Energy Star Portfolio Manager, it makes sense just to get everything up to date that you possibly can, which includes your water bills. We do not have a contact, Jerry, but I'm guessing that you guys can provide one that folks can call to get their usage history. But for the folks on the phone, what Jerry's talking about is if you wanted to get your water bills in a spreadsheet format, right, Jerry? You could get that from the water department. Yep. So yeah, we can include that. Jerry, that's a great call out. Let's touch base on that offline, and we'll get a contact for you, and we can maybe think about creating a resource or something that will help folks who want to benchmark water this summer.
Okay.
So to get into
Great.
portfolio managing, this is Margaret from the utility.
Yeah.
To get to the portfolio manager, how do we do that? How do we get started?
Sure. If you go to your browser and type in Energy Star Portfolio Manager, you can create an account, and you can either navigate the tool yourself, use one of the tutorials on their training page, and actually, Lauren, maybe you could pull could you pull the Energy Star Portfolio Manager training URL and put it into the chat box there?
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
So, question is, go on, please.
Yep.
Another question is, I understood that some of this data can be automated from your utility, like Excel would be an example. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And then what about, in the case of regional water, we have many Excel accounts. How do you have a combining feature?
That's a really good question. So we do have quite a few contacts at Excel that can help with more detailed questions, but I can tell you overall for buildings, Excel provides a relatively recent addition to the toolbox is to get whole building energy consumption data from your Excel services. So if you use Excel for electricity and natural gas, which is the standard in St. Paul, you can get whole building energy consumption data for your building. And so that could be a combination of different meters within your building, not all of which you would necessarily pay, but Excel could provide you with one number that would include all of those different meters consumption. So if you have a building that has multiple meters, that's how you would deal with it. For the water department as a whole, it kind of depends on the building by building situation. But when we're benchmarking, typically we want to disaggregate the information at least to the whole building level, and then that's what we want is the whole building energy consumption, because that's where the benchmark comes from. So we wouldn't want to combine it more than that, but pretty much wherever your meter lies. Some meters have multiple buildings connected to them, for example. We find that on college campuses. we probably, well, through Energy Star Portfolio Manager and through the Excel benchmarking tool that I mentioned, we wouldn't be able to disaggregate it more than that 1 meter that might cover multiple built properties. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's a really good question, and I think it's truly when we work with folks one-on-one on benchmarking, it's where a lot of the nitty-gritty comes out, is trying to figure out their utility meter situation and figuring out the most efficient and most effective way to benchmark that building given the resources that we have. So it's a little puzzle that we solve with pretty much every building. So just wanted to close up the slideshow here. The Race to Reduce is really a stepwise approach to energy efficiency. And so, you know, as I've emphasized on this phone call, we believe benchmarking is the first step. We also are encouraging our participating buildings to look at their HVAC next month and scheduling the month following that. More to come, but we really do believe that benchmarking is the first step. And so a lot of our program resources and efforts are going toward helping you and your buildings benchmark. So here's my contact info. Feel free to call or email anytime, and I will get back to you. The phone number that I provided earlier is kind of our general number, and certainly if you want to email me, one of our program staff will be able to get back to you. Lauren, who's our intern who's on the phone, is mostly focusing on building registration and help, and I'm also focusing on providing technical assistance to buildings on benchmarking, as well as working with our partners. So happy to chat with anyone about any questions they have. Any other questions on the phone about the program, the partners, what we're doing, what we're aiming for? I'm happy to speak to that. I just got a chat. It was just someone asking for my email address though, so. Anything else from the phone? Okay, great. So as I mentioned, especially for those of you who are looking to get started on benchmarking or just want to know what the first step is, we will provide a step-by-step benchmarking guide, hopefully by the end of this week, that will show you, how to set up an account, how to set up your buildings, how to connect your meters. It will give you some of the web-based resources that we mentioned, and hopefully that'll be super useful for you. You can also call us anytime. We'll walk you through the process. You can schedule a meeting to come by our office, and we'll walk you through benchmarking. We're trying to get an in-person data jam organized for later this summer, so stay tuned for info on that. What that would be is a 4-hour session where you sit down with some of our program partners and actually benchmark one of your buildings. It's not scheduled yet though, so I wouldn't wait on it, but we will let you know about that. And yeah, stay tuned for more info and resources, and very, very glad to have you all on the call today, and hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.